Greetings, homunculi, and welcome to my podcast. Today, I'm going to be yapping about the power of human will in Romeo and Juliet, and if it actually is the driving force to the play. Now I've sent you to sleep, it's time to start. Human will can be a beautifully destructive thing. It's a flame of hunger, a selfish need, desperation and desire become carnage alike. Human will is the only thing I know of that can unite people and tear them apart simultaneously. And Romeo and Juliet is the most palatable piece of fiction which can accurately portray that. To quote Stalin, I believe in one thing only, the power of human will. Ironic. Evidently true, as shown via the deus ex machina of Romeo's rash spirit. Quote, "Thou wast never with me for anything when thou wast not there for the goose." End quote. Human will can defy the stars. So, defy the stars by dating the enemy like a turncoat, defy the stars by getting married to Leo Dio at 12 years old, and defy the stars with coercive suicide. Wow, peak romance. Clearly human will is a trump card to literal fate, right? Human will is most obviously exercised after Romeo's stupidly rash choice to go down the sewer slide. And by doing so, Romeo strips his darling of any alternative option to suicide that a fatalistic 12-year-old could conjure up. I sure as hell know that if I were plopped into the dark fantasy of waking up to the love of my life dead on top of my grave, I'd want to top myself too. Alright, so let's straighten this out. Fate is beaten by human will, which is beaten by guilt-tripping your girlfriends into suicide by dying on her? So that human will thing, huh? Pretty nifty, huh? Well, despite how shallowly I disregarded it in the previous section, this wouldn't be a discursive if I spent way too much time yapping about suicide. Human will corrupted is the most powerful force to be reckoned with in Romeo and Juliet. To quote Lord Acton, "Power tends to corrupt, and absolute power corrupts absolutely." End quote. You're probably thinking right now,
Hold on, you pretentious little 15-year-old. How the flip does this even remotely relate to what the question is?
And to that I say, I'm tying it back right now. Segue. "Thy drugs are quick. Thus, with a kiss, I die," Juliet proclaimed over the corpse of her love. But was that her intention? I'm sure everyone knows that Juliet's wish was to run away with Romeo, to live her life forever in the safety of the other's arms. And yet again, I'm sure that everyone knows how that played out. What were the factors in that decision? Fate brought them together, human will kept them together, but the corruption of said human will tore them apart. It was Death's corruption upon a previously light-hearted production which left Tybalt and Mercutio as the founding fathers of R&J's death toll in their battle with Romeo. It was how time was corrupted, soaking into and destroying Friar Lawrence's plan. And finally, it was a corruption of what was supposed to be a moment of heart between Romeo and Juliet, but instead a moment of horror. Stalin is right, you should believe in the power of human will, but specifically, you should believe in the power of human will, corrupted. Another question for you lot, despite the fact that you're probably sick of them. Why was their human will corrupted? And no, I'm not yapping about the reasons in the play, but I mean why? Everything just had to go perfectly wrong, didn't it? In the quote, "I fear too early, for my mind misgives. Some consequence yet hanging in the stars shall bitterly begin his fearful date with this night's revels, and expire the term of a despised life closed in my breast by some vile forfeit of untimely death." Romeo proclaims his fear that by sneaking into Lord Capulet's party, he is being doomed to a bitter end by the stars. Now, obviously this isn't enough evidence to claim that fate, of all things, is the ultimate force behind the plot of this play. However, it's a prominent theme of the play, which definitely adds an interesting perspective to it. This debate between whether fate or corrupted human will is the impetus in which moves this play forward reminds me of a fight I had with my friend Carly. We were arguing about Brokeback Mountain, you know, the gay cowboy movie, and whether Jack was used by Ennis or not. I argued that Jack was a tool for Ennis' self-discovery, but Ennis still loved Jack because humans are complicated. She argued that Ennis loved Jack, but not enough to prevent himself from using Jack. We argued till midnight. It was nearly on the dot when Carly realised that we were rearranging words differently to say the same thing. Ennis used Jack, but they still loved each other. That's what makes the movie so good. Romeo and Juliet is kind of like Brokeback Mountain when you think about it. And no, I'm not talking about Mercutio's wild, fun, queer-coded glory. Jack and Ennis, similar to Romeo and Juliet, are star-crossed lovers, destined to never be. Long story short, Brokeback and R&J both portray how human will corrupted and fate are actually one. Let's backtrack to make my point more clear. I asked you a question. Clearly human will is the trump card to literal fate, right? With my useless rambling about human will corrupted and all this time you've been given, what's your answer to this question? Since I can't actually hear you, let me ask another question that will help you solve the first one. If human will trumps fate, while hellish exousia corrupts human will, is there actually a difference between human will, corrupted, and fate? What I'm trying to say is that human will in Romeo and Juliet is separate from fate, but the corruption of said human will and the detriment that causes is all caused by fate. Human will corrupted is fate. So what's the most powerful force in Romeo and Juliet? Fate? Human will? Fate would make the most logical sense in my opinion, but that's for you to decide. But enough senseless yapping from me. So long, and thanks for all the fish.
Rockin'